Hey there and welcome back to Sea Power Tutorials. Today we're talking about electronic warfare. This is a potentially underlooked element of the warfare part of this game, yet it is very important. Electronic warfare can be considered like you're trying to find something, yet somebody is shining a flashlight in your eyes. You can't see. Electronic warfare tends to be the electronic version of that. So these big radar dishes that I have on the top of this Kirov class cruiser, they're going to get blinded. Or rather, the US is going to get blinded. Because serving as our target today is this US battle group. You can see they have an aircraft carrier, they have a couple of destroyers, they have a couple of cruisers around. This is a pretty tough to crack formation. The first test is going to be what happens when I launch my missiles at them and I don't have jamming in place. I'm going to send all of my missiles generally in the direction of the aircraft carrier. And seeing as these are smart missiles, they will sort themselves out. So we're going to launch all of them, and then we're going to see what happens as NATO detects the missiles and then promptly tries to shoot them down. By the way, the detection aircraft for now is just a Tu-95, but that is not important. The missiles are on target. Once they get there, you will see what happens. The missiles are now approaching the battle group, and as you can just visually see, we have a couple of these radars active. This means that the US fleet is most likely well aware of the fact that there are missiles in the air. Depending on the type of ship that you're trying to engage, they will get them engaged from farther or shorter away. In this case, we are about 60, 65 miles out, 70 miles in some situations. Now, Ticonderogas have a range of about 65 miles with their harpoons. With their their surface-to-air missiles, they should be starting to engage fairly soon. And seeing as they're not getting blinded, there's no electronic warfare in play, these missiles can get detected, and they can also promptly get engaged. It's not the situation where I'm shining a light into the US's radars. They can see. And as such, this means that, there we go, that was already a missile that was trying to get intercepted. We should be able to see these ships starting to launch missiles. You can already definitely see them trying. One missile was intercepted by a Standard Missile-2, medium range from track 7008, which I suspect very much is one of the Ticonderoga class ships. There we go. This means that at this range of about 15 miles is where they're at now. You can see that these ships are starting return fire. They know that there's missiles, and as good as these SSN-19s are, there is just a lot of missile defense aboard this US ship, or rather aboard these US ships. All of these ships, there we go, there's the third missile that got intercepted. These missiles are going to get intercepted one after the other. It is possible that some will get through, but just note that we've already lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 out of our 20 missiles. All of those got intercepted. And again, you might still get a kill. You might still get 1 or 2 hits, but that'll be about it. There we go, there's 1 hit on the carrier, which is an ideal target. This SSN-19 is going for that Kid-class destroyer. We're probably going to have another hit on the aircraft carrier. So, you could argue this missile strike was a success. Although, of course, you really want to cause as much damage, and ideally you'd eliminate the whole group. So we did hit the Kid over there. We're about to hit potentially another ship back there, and it looks like we might get 1 more hit. There we go, there's the Ticonderoga, and it got hit. If you're getting hit by an SSN-19, it is quite likely that you're not going to survive the encounter. And this one did get intercepted with its COS, there's the missile exploding. So, actual hits, not many. We hit 2 tracks, 7007 and 7006. And that's the aircraft carrier. We apparently also hit this thing. So our efficacy of the missiles was really quite limited. Just here for confirmation, we have hit the Dwight D. Eisenhower, so we hit the carrier. We've hit a cruiser, we've hit the Sacramento, which is a support ship. We've destroyed a Kid, and we've even destroyed a helicopter, which was aboard the destroyer. So really we didn't do that much damage. Let's see how we can do once we do activate electronic warfare. I've now added in an electronic warfare aircraft. In this case, sticking with the Russian theme, this is the Tu-16P. As you can see, it doesn't carry any weapons. It only has one unit, which is offensive ECM. It's an offensive jammer. Once you click that, left click, and then right click on the tactical display, you can see that there's a cone, and that's where I'm actually jamming. So this way you can start to see, okay, this is how far I can jam. It doesn't mean that the radars will be completely blinded, but they will have a much harder time. If you're using electronic warfare like this to jam enemy radars, it is very important to note that you want to have your electronic warfare in the same direction as where your missiles are coming from. So that means that the Kirov is currently behind the jammer, and it's going to be far more effective with all of its missiles. So once again, we're going to launch all of these missiles in the general direction of the targets, and let the missiles themselves figure out where they need to go. The units over here on the tactical display, this track 7002, has a very small sun icon next to it. That means it's getting jammed. And this way, it's going to have far more difficulty being able to intercept missiles. As for this direction, I'm going to once again emphasize it. Make sure it is within line where you are targeting the units. So the missiles have to basically fly past the electronic warfare aircraft. Or, depending on the situation, if you have aircraft launching another strike, I could, for example, have another unit of aircraft firing from here and have the electronic warfare plane behind them, so long as you're able to get those units in your range. Imagine that you are in a fist fight, and somebody's shining a light into your eyes, right from the front. The attacker is also right in front of you. And this means you can't see them, so you can barely defend yourself. You cannot really throw a punch back. If the enemy is, or let's say somebody's shining a flashlight from the side, so let's say I were to jam from over here, they're shining a flashlight from the side, and the attacker is still coming in from the front, so somebody trying to punch you is still coming in from the front, you'd see that. Yes, you might, from the corner of your eye, see that there's light, or in this case, the radar is going to be jammed in this direction, but that doesn't really do a whole lot for my missiles. So now let's see what happens when those missiles arrive while the US fleet is getting jammed. The missiles are once again approaching. We're about 25 miles out from one of our targets, and so far, no NATO response. Last time around, they started firing about 16, 17 miles out. Right now, I'm not seeing any response from these ships, nothing. That's because they're getting blinded. They cannot see anything. The radars are getting jammed. The radars are getting such a massive amount of return information from the jamming aircraft, from that Tu-16, that they simply don't see any missiles. There is, however, a burn-through point. At some point, this radar at short range is going to be so powerful that it will detect the missiles. But by that time, it might be too late. By that time, there might not be enough time to respond to detect and eliminate all of the missiles. So even if you have an enemy aircraft or an enemy surface group jammed, they will be able to start launching missiles at some point. Right now, though, we're at 13 miles, 12 miles. There's nothing happening. Now you're starting to see some response. Now we're seeing a little bit of a response, but still no missiles. It's because those missiles, they need to be guided by the radar onto the target, and the gun doesn't have that issue. The gun does not have that problem. And this is not the only US ship that's not actually doing anything. The rest of them, they're just sailing around. They're trying to defend themselves, and they might use their close-in weapon systems, those very fast-fire cannons you can see on the sides here. But that's about it. So there's finally one missile. But they basically launched that when I was 1 mile away. And of course, that's too late. This means that the US battleships, or sorry, the US fleet here, is going to have their ass handed to them. Just by virtue of electronic warfare. So I've already hit the carrier a couple of times. One of these missiles, yeah, there we go. We got one sinking ship, most likely. Another one. This one's already gonna probably sink. Doesn't really need much more attention, but the missiles don't know that. This one is definitely trying to defend itself, this Ticonderoga. But again, it's a bit late. It's not really gonna work. So this time around, you'll definitely get a lot more kills. And that is the beauty of electronic warfare. You're able to just blind the enemy and decimate their battle group just with a couple of strikes. At this point, all of my missiles have arrived. Now let's see what the score is. We have hit the aircraft carrier, we've hit the Spruance, we've hit the Sacramento, we've killed the Ticonderoga, we've killed the Kit, we've killed an Oliver Hazard Perry. And of course 5 helicopters that were probably still aboard the the various ships. I think the Eisenhower might still sink that carrier. So just by using electronic warfare, you can double the amount of kills that you're getting. The beauty of electronic warfare is that it also works in reverse. I have now set myself up as the blue NATO task force, so I have the US battle group. Of course, they have all of their various aircraft. This is the jammer, this is the other jammer, and over here they have the observation aircraft. I, however, have an aircraft carrier, and I'm going to launch my own electronic warfare aircraft, the EA-6B. I'm going to launch 3 separate ones, and this way I can start my own jamming. I know that Kirov, which is somewhere out there in the distance, knows that I'm here, because this is their observation aircraft, so they will be sending missiles. Which, by the way, the game kind of gives away once you start seeing that you cannot go faster than 10 times speed. That's when the game says, sorry, I cannot go any faster because there's a missile or a torpedo in the air/water. Anyway, we have launched our first aircraft. This is Magic 1. I'm going to position Magic 1 behind me. This, of course, only works if you know where the threat is coming from. So in this case, I'm assuming that I know exactly where the threat is. The reason why I'm positioning my jammers behind me is because I want to make sure that my ships have the best, let's say, jamming coverage possible. So I'm not jamming my own radars, I'm jamming the radars mounted on their anti-ship missiles. That is the plan. So I'm going to have Magics 1, 2, and 3 activate their jammer. We're going to activate the electronic countermeasure in front of the fleet. So pointing at the threat. Pointing at exactly where I expect that threat to come from. I don't really need to change anything else about the formation because some of these ships already have their radars active. And I don't really want to tinker with that, so as not to change the, let's say, the conditions of the experiment. Now we wait. You can sort of see that all of these jammers are more or less covering the whole fleet, except for the McCluskey over here. So ideally, I'd slightly position maybe Magics 1 and 2 slightly back. Just getting a slightly better position. If you are ever unhappy about where your aircraft is jamming, or maybe your aircraft changed position, just click this again, right-click somewhere else, and that way you can relocate your jammer. The aircraft does not have to be pointing at a specific direction in order to use that jammer. So, as grim as it is, now we wait. Now we wait for the missiles to come in. Again, I must emphasize this works only if you know where the threat is coming from. And if you're facing a radar-guided missile. An infrared missile is just not gonna care. It does not have a radar, it cannot get jammed. It might, however, go after a flare, for example. A flare is very hot, and as such... there we go, there's the missiles. A flare is hot, and a flare will attract an infrared missile. These SSN-19s don't care for heat signatures, they care for big radar signatures. The bigger, the better, because a big radar signature is most likely an important target. You can see that these things are getting jammed. They too have that little sun icon next to their track number. And normally, they would have found the formation by now. How far away are they relative to the carrier? 40 miles. In my example, where I was using these things against the Americans, they were already on sea skimming mode. Now, it's possible that they have one of those missiles as a sort of flight leader, designating targets. But it cannot properly designate targets if it does not see anything. That's where the radar comes in. That's where the radar comes in, and that's also where that radar meets my magic. Meets my electronic warfare. So let's play this out. I'm not touching any of the controls regarding countermeasures or surface-to-air missiles. That's my ship's automatic actions. You can see that my ships are responding, they're sending their missiles out. And over here we might have our first intercept. There you go. That's the first missile that got intercepted. Okay, you might go, but that's just the one. And you're right. These missiles are still pretty dangerous. Some of them, however, are sticking up far higher for longer than they normally would. Now they're finally going down. But it still gives me more time to intercept them because they don't really know where to go. They can't see anything. And as such, they are a bit less of a threat. You cannot really fully negate them because sometimes they might just, well, get lucky. There is an element of RNG involved. Right now, for example, I cannot really see any of the missiles anymore. There we go. Oh, they're 14... yeah, they're about 14 miles out. At this point, it's just a big mess of missiles. Both mine and theirs. And that is where Sea Power does really look spectacular, but at the moment, I don't want to pay too much attention to that. You can see that all the escort ships are trying to throw their missiles at the targets. The aircraft carrier with its RIM 7s is likely one of the ships trying to engage, but one of the last ones to do so. Now these missiles are snaking left and right. They're trying to do a sort of S pattern. They're trying to find something, which they can't because they're blinded. And previously, this missile knew exactly where to go. Right now, you can see it's still sort of confusedly looking around, going, hold on, where's my target? It doesn't know, but now it has found something. So while this while this ECM, this electronic countermeasure stuff works, it is never perfect. You will at some point have a burn through where the radar of the jammed aircraft and or missile is going to see something. And that's right now for this missile. This SSN-19 has spotted a target and it is most likely going to strike this ship. It's most likely not going to get intercepted because they don't have any time anymore. And yet, if that's it, if only the Sacramento has been hit, I consider that a win, because that was the whole wave of missiles. There's nothing else coming for me. The missile that you can still see in the air here is mine, Standard Missile 2. As for the rest, I believe that's it. So you can, this way, very, very, very efficiently just shut down incoming missiles if they are radar guided. Again, positioning is key. Keep your missiles behind, keep your jammers behind where you want your jamming to go. So I'm trying to blind towards the west. They're searching towards the east. If I'm jamming towards the west and a missile comes in from the north, that missile's going to go, huh? I don't care, because I don't even see the jammer. The jammer's not directed at it. And this way, that missile is just going to fly right in. Or, of course, it is going to try and get stopped by the Paul Foster, for example. But outside of that, it does not care about the jamming. Alright, that is jamming in electronic warfare in a nutshell. You can use it offensively to jam the enemy as you're launching an attack against them. You can also use it defensively if you know exactly where the attack is going to come from, and if you know that they're using radar-guided anti-ship missiles. They're using any other type of missiles, for example infrareds, yeah, their jamming is not going to do much. Let me know what your thoughts are. If you have any questions, please post those down below. I look forward to seeing your effects with all of the jamming. Let me know how effective or how ineffective it was. And good luck on the high seas of Sea Power.